we talking about again? I'm just kidding.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with Alex King and Dan Mangina. Today is Tuesday, March the 10th, 2020. It's 4 p.m. New York time. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we're really happy today because we've got a special guest that Daniel, in all his infinite capacity as a magnificent human being, has brought to us from Dr. Joe Dispenza, of all people. Kim Li Boda, who is a team leader for Dr. Joe, is here at our request to answer some questions about, at my request to answer some questions about meditation and what makes Dr. Joe's meditation practice so special. But if you're listening to the live stream, we'll also be happy to take questions from audience in the live stream, in case you have any, that Kim would be more than happy to address. So Kim, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Wow, nothing like being under pressure.
I think she gets this show. What do you guys think?
Low bit.
I think Kim gets it.
That's probably why Dan recommended that I come on the show. I don't know.
Yeah,
probably. Yeah.
I was like, we had a show about a month and change ago, and it ended up being a show all about Dr. Joe. I think it was just when I got back from Dubai.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not qualified to answer these questions. I'm just a consumer. I'm not. And I was like pre-qualifying every single answer, like, just so you know, I'm not speaking on behalf of Ensophalon or Dr. Joe. I was like, I'm just going to get someone that can answer these questions. I've got the person for you. And I kind of like called it out live on air that I'm going to ask Kim. And then you said yes. So it's like, yay.
Which is a lot easier. It's easier than my first plan, which was to put subtitles under Dan that says the opinions expressed by Dan Mangina are not those of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Well, you probably should do that with me too, because I'm not Dr. Joe Dispenza. I never will be, and I am a student in training, and I'm still in training. So,
Hey, it's okay, because I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've been doing this podcast now for 7.5 years, and I'm still a student in training where the law of attraction is concerned. So believe me, you're in the right neighborhood.
I think we're always going to be students in training.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Although my wife had an interesting story about that kind of thing. My wife is also an LOA practitioner, and she's also with me been getting interested in Dr. Joe's work. But also before that, she was a psychotherapist. And when she was in training to get her certification as a psychotherapist, she went to a weekend workshop, kind of reminiscent of a Dr. Joe workshop, but it was a weekend workshop for therapists in training. And she had this one teacher who just blew her away at how great he was. She just loved him. She was learning so much on that weekend and so forth. And at one point, now you have to understand also, my wife at that point was she's always been like me, a very introverted person, which is weird for a podcast host, but that's another story. But she's always been introverted, and she was particularly not confident at that point in her life. But she summoned up the courage to go up to this guy and said, I really love what you're teaching. You're so amazing. And they'd been working on self-confidence and self-esteem in the previous piece of the workshop. So he said, well, if I'm amazing, what does that make you? And she thought about it for a minute. And she said, well, I'm amazing in training.
Oh, I love that. That's great. I'm amazing in training. I like that. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
Hang on. Let me get a piece of paper.
So we're all amazing in training. That's the way I look at it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
Always.
Hashtag amazing in training. Alex collects for your hashtags, Kim. Alex collects the hashtags. So.
Oh, really?
And she comes up with the best hashtags. I mean, really, she is the king of
I
hashtags.
just rearrange what you guys say and put a hashtag in front of it. That's all I do.
So Kim, let's get to it, because this is a question that's been haunting me since that conversation that we had with Dan and Alex about a month ago. At one point we were talking about meditation and kind of talking a little bit about the way Dr. Joe teaches meditation. And the question that I raised that I think that really caused Dan to say, let's bring Kim in here, is What is it about Dr. Joe's approach to meditation that seems to be more effective than everybody else? Because there are a lot of people, a lot of really high quality LOA teachers and gurus and coaches out there teaching meditation, but I haven't seen anybody. Now, maybe Dr. Joe just collects more testimonials. I don't know. But I haven't seen anybody who has one testimonial after another about how the meditation practice was so effective and they had such great results and so forth. And so I wondered, I mean, is it just the hype, or is he really doing something great? What's so good that makes the meditation approach so effective the way Dr. Joe teaches it?
All right. Well, I'm going to always use myself as the example because I can only deliver the information from my own reality and my own
Sure.
experiences.
Yep.
So when I discovered Dr. Joe's meditations, I was at a really low point in my life. I was struggling with the programs that I was running, and I didn't realize I was running a program. And after I started to do the work, you know, I started reading Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. That's the book that I first started with. So how I found Dr. Joe was in 2010. I had basically gone through the real estate downturn. I have a real estate consulting background, and that was my primary business. And what happened was I literally could not get out of bed one day, and I knew I was in trouble because I have 2 kids at the time. I still have my kids, by the way.
Good
I
thing, good thing.
I had 2 kids at the time, and it's just like,
I lost
wait,
one this
I need
past
to
weekend. I don't know where they went.
oh, that's right. They're teenagers now. I don't
Oh,
really
yes. Oh,
know.
yes.
No, I'm just kidding. But I knew I was in trouble because I was a single parent, and I was I literally went to the doctor and I said, look, I don't know what's wrong with me. I suspected that I had depression, which I did.
Mhm.
And I also had anxiety attacks. I was driving down the road, and I just remembered that out of nowhere, my chest seized up. I thought I was having a heart attack.
Mm.
And soon after that was when I couldn't function anymore. I couldn't get out of bed. So I was put on antidepressants, and they helped me. And I was an emergency situation, and I I'm not anti medication, especially when you're in an emergency mode.
Oh, sure.
But no one wants to be on medication forever. No
Mhm.
one does. We might, feel the respite, right away from the pain and the struggling and the stress. But the bottom line is that we don't want to be on medication. So for 3 years, I was searching for something. And I'm curious in general, anyways. And I found a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. It was actually introduced to me by someone at my spiritual center. She invited me to the book study. She was, facilitating it. And I read the first 20 pages, and I was blown away. And I was just like, this is exactly what I've believed all my life about the quantum and the law of attraction. I absolutely believed in the law of attraction. And then so anyhow, I think what was different about the meditations when I started to do them was I was going into the program. I was going into the operating system. And since then, since I began was introduced to Dr. Joe's work, I became certified to teach meditation. So I went back to school. I went to school for a year, and it took me about a year to get through the program. But I learned about, all the fundamentals of meditation. And what's different about Dr. Joe's meditations is that it's about going in and rewiring the brain, about Hebbian law. So nerve cells that fire together wire together, and just the way that he lays down all of the concepts in a physiological and biological model. And I think that really resonates with people too, because about things that are not, forgive me for saying this, they're not woo woo. And he does a lot of research. And so the going into the operating system and pruning the old self limiting beliefs, replacing them with, positive thoughts and beliefs that I had accumulated over many, many years, I worked on myself, and just the process was really unique. So within 8 to 12 weeks of doing an hour and 15-minute meditations in the morning and an hour and 15-minute meditations at night, from the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself book, I I immediately saw results, but they were kind of like results on steroids, because naturally when you meditate, you are changing your brainwave patterns, and you are creating, um, so many, you're creating so many benefits just by virtue of the practice of meditation alone.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that was, I had that going for me. But then, what I was saying about the being on steroids, his meditations are so effective because you're going in and you're working on those 95% of the programs that you're running every single day. I mean, think about that. We're running, 95% of who we are is a set of programs that we
Mm.
run every single day. And so we have about 5% of willpower to make any kind of changes.
It's amazing
And
we could do anything.
yeah,
Mm,
well, here's the kicker. Not 70% of that, 70% of the programs are negative.
Mm.
mm.
So nothing was ever effective. I'd go to all kinds of, anyways, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I mean, that's part of it. There's so much more about it. But for me, I really believe that it has something to do with the rewiring and resetting, and mind over matter and
So it
res-
sounds, I mean, if I'm going to take what you said and kind of push it back to you, it sounds like what you're saying is, yes, you did a regular routine. You actually did 2 very extensive sessions every single day for, I mean, you've been doing it all along, right? That you haven't really
yes,
stopped doing that.
right.
Which I think is longer than many recommend. Some people say, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it varies, but I don't think I've ever heard an hour and a quarter twice a day. That's a pretty intensive thing right
Yeah,
there.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
It
And
is. And it's very intentional. It's a guided meditation, and you are taken through a process of, um, you know, working on certain things, working on certain intentions, working on some, taking a self-limiting belief and pulling it out and looking at it and becoming aware of it, becoming aware of the emotions that are behind it. But it's a process, and it's a process in your waking moments as well. It's not just in the meditation. It's actually when you get up from your meditation and you begin to walk into your life, that you apply the work as well.
mm, yeah, that's true. And then the other piece of it that it sounds like you're associating is the work that you do outside of the meditating. That because
Yes,
you talked about how you were working actively, which I presumed meant consciously, to rewire your brain.
very much
And
so.
so that means like you're doing it throughout your day.
Yes. So a lot of those 95% of the programs that we're running are unconscious, subconscious programs.
Hmm.
And the effectiveness of the work is bringing those unconscious, subconscious programs to light so that they're no longer uh, subconscious anymore, because you've become aware of them. So once you become aware of those programs, now you are not, you're not in the dark anymore. You know that you have something to work with.
Yeah.
And so now you're not just aimlessly walking about, allowing, other powers that be, namely your body and your mind, to run the programs. You've
Basically
become aware.
following up on a concept that psychotherapists have used for years, which is if you can bring to the surface whatever the issue is that's been haunting you, you take its power away just because you brought it to the surface.
Exactly. And you intentionally work on it, and
Hmm.
it's becoming aware of it, uh and replacing it, because just because we have a thought doesn't mean it's true, and we all know that about our self-limiting beliefs. Those are stories that we tell ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. So, okay, well, then if I had to summarize the answer to my own question, it's the intensiveness. I mean, there is a lot of commitment that you've made through the teaching of Dr. Joe to healing and to getting stronger and getting better and developing your ability to focus more on what you like and take your mind off that stuff you don't want to be playing in your head anymore. It's a real life commitment. It sounds like that you're talking about.
Well, practicing the law of attraction is a life commitment, because it's all about an energy frequency, and the thoughts that we have carry a message, and they carry a frequency. And whatever we send out, as you already know, and I already know, but perhaps I'm verbalizing it differently, because I have learned from Dr. Joe. So much of my, much of what I don't want to say regurgitate, but
Well, you can say that.
but sincerely, I mean, I am a student of Dr. Joe, and so what I know to be true is that it all starts with a thought, and that thought carries a frequency. But what we do is we become that frequency when we begin to make choices and take actions behind that thought. So I've become really aware of the thoughts, that I think, and that's really where I always try to stay focused.
That awareness is huge too. We talk about that a lot here on the show. I mean, Alex and I did a show that did very, very well, where we focused on the question of, well, how often do we miss, the things that are important, the manifestations, the clues, and we miss it a lot. It's actually something where mindfulness starts to become a very important concept, because it's no longer just a concept. Now it's a discipline every day, being, aware, paying attention, so you can notice what's happening, what tapes are playing, what changes are happening when you're making progress.
Yeah, for
without
sure.
that, you don't even know. Without that, you can just fall right back into the tape playing mode.
Amen.
I think one of the things that I loved about Dr. Joe's work when I got into it was, again, mirroring what Kim said, the non-woo-woo aspect of it, because I came to his work not even realizing there was any woo-esque elements to it at all. I came through You Are the Placebo, with this scientific graphs, and he's talking about this and the scientific research, and there was this test and that test. So when I went to my first live event in Berlin 4 or 5 years ago, I was expecting to kind of learn more about that, and then I got hit with this meditation. I was like, oh wow, okay. So it's like merging those worlds, merging the spiritual element with the meditation, merging the mental element with the thoughts and our beliefs, and then merging that with the actual physical rewiring of the brain, which then affects what the frequency signals are that are going out, which affects what the thoughts are, which affects what the beliefs are, which affects what the lens through which we see our reality, and then it affects us physically, and then it creates this, it's almost like breaking the vicious cycle and establishing a new positive cycle in the direction of the new outcomes that we've chosen to call into our life. But that all starts with the thoughts. So I think it's really cool. Personally, I just think he's dope. And a really cool cat too. And a really cool cat as well.
So Kim, we actually have a live stream question for you. Josephine's asking a question. She says, Kim, what are your thoughts on rewiring DNA?
Well, I mean, we are changing our telomeres when we meditate. We've got some of the research that we do is and telomeres are those little, the DNA strand at the bottom of the DNA strand. There is they're like shoelaces. They come down, so let me just kind of show you, so the DNA strand kind of wraps around. But at the very bottom of the DNA strand, when we age, that strand at the very bottom begins to fray. And through research, mindfulness and meditation in general, even, and I believe working on your energy levels. A lot of what we do is energy work, and but that can change and reverse the aging process. So they are researching meditation, mindfulness, and mental rehearsal on the effects of our DNA and the telomeres, and definitely the telomeres get lengthened. And so what that means is a healthier, so it's like that little, that little plastic sheath at the end of a tennis shoelace.
Mhm.
That sheath is what breaks down and begins to fray, and those actually get stronger again. So
Okay.
yes, we already are working on that when we are practicing a mindfulness meditation and mental rehearsal and energy program.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that our DNA had split ends the older that we get, and it
Yeah.
makes sense. It makes sense
Yep.
that we need to have the right conditioner for it. So,
I was just gonna say that.
I love it. Hashtag. There's your hashtag,
There you
Alex.
go.
Yeah.
So yeah, great answer. And you're kind of reminding me of something, because one of my personal goals is, now that I'm above 30, is to actually reverse my age trend, to get to the point
Meditation.
where through meditation and through every practice I can find to do it, dietary and affirmation or whatever else, and to get to the point where literally my goal is something that most people consider impossible. My goal is to get my body to the point where it looks like I'm 21.
Well,
And I think it's doable.
that day is coming.
I think
I'm
it's
sure
very
it's
doable.
around the corner.
Yeah.
It's probably around the corner, right? Right,
I
Daniel?
think I treat it like the 4-minute mile, because until Roger Bannister ran the 4-minute mile, everybody said it was impossible.
Mhm.
Just could not be.
Right.
The human body cannot physically move that fast. Now that they get there in 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but at the time, 4 minutes seemed impossible. Well, it's the same thing. Why
Right.
can't we reverse aging, so to speak? Why can't we reverse
Well,
the debilitating side of aging?
They're doing some crazy stuff with even stem cell stuff, and there's a clinic down here, not too far from me, where they do into the joints. They do like stem cells into the joints, pure stem cells,
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
and they do like freeze therapy and some other really cool
Mhm.
stuff that probably wouldn't get approved by the FDA, but they do it down here in Mexico. But yeah, they do all sorts of crazy stuff. So I mean, if you were supporting it with, because they say, I think there was one of the stories that was in You Are the Placebo was about, though, they put the people from the old people's home in a literal monastery and cut them off from the world and got them to pretend that they were like in their 20s for a week or something like that.
Oh, that was the Ellen Langer study. Yeah,
that's the one. And
yeah.
And yet they were physically registering as being younger. So if you're doing that over a consistent basis and you're supporting it with food and stuff that is aligned with your belief systems about how to reverse that, and you're doing certain practices, and then you're topping that off by supporting yourself with meditation, which has been scientifically demonstrated to actually go in there, like Kim said, repair those shoelace ends and get that conditioner effect going on, then yeah, it's no longer quantum potential. What you're going for is literally a 3-dimensional potential now.
That's right. Yeah. And a very real one. And once achieved, a very tangible one. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like that as a goal, as something to aim for, because when you get there, there's absolutely no doubt about what happened. It's not like somebody can explain it away, well, he just ate right.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is also changing your environment. The latest with epigenetics says that our environment is really what turns on the genes for disease.
Mhm.
And so if we think about what our environment consists of, we're thinking about the people in our lives, the thoughts that we think, and part of was it Alan Langer? Is that what you said his name was?
Ellen Langer, Dr. Ellen Langer at
Dr.
Harvard.
Ellen. Oh, it was a woman.
It was a woman.
Oh,
yeah.
so sorry. I'm just kidding.
Girl power.
She was actually
girl power.
International Girl Power Day.
She was one of the
other day.
founders. She was one of the founders of positive psychology at Harvard University.
Okay.
Nice.
So,
Yep.
So that experiment was effective as well because the environment was changed to reflect the environment that those gentlemen had at that younger age. What was it, 18? Maybe somewhere
they were in their
20 something.
They were in their 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
and they were asked to behave like they were 20 years younger. So
yeah, but their environment
1979.
reflected.
Right.
Yeah, the music.
When they,
It was 1979.
The newspapers, the books.
And
Yes.
they had pictures of President Eisenhower, because he was the president 20 years before, and they had Look magazine and Life magazine, all dated from the 1950s. So everything
Right.
was set up as if it were 20 years before when the study was done. And
So there you
after
go,
one
Walt.
week, after 1 week, they came out of that. The measurement that really caught my attention from that study, they measured a lot of things physiologically, but they also measured, among other things, eyesight. And their eyesight improved by 10% in a week. And I said, whoa, that's really
pretty cool.
That's insane.
So imagine if you took the time out to actually curate your life
Right.
to support the outcome that you want. Imagine
Exactly.
if the people, places, and things in your life reflected the version of you that you wanted to be,
Yes.
versus, disempowering states that we're seeking to move away from.
Mhm.
And then you're doing that consistently, rather than doing it for a week and then saying, oh, it hasn't happened yet, or I've only had this much, I'm going to stop now, it doesn't work. But sticking with it and giving it a go. Imagine what miracles we'd see in the world then.
It blows my mind, and I like to think about that a lot, actually. I really do.
So now I know why I look young, because I watch Disney Channel every day.
There you go.
Okay.
That's it.
That'll work. That's good.
That does work. Yeah.
It does, apparently.
I'm ruthless with curating my environment. Ruthless with curating my environment. I literally, once a week, I sit down and I ask myself, what in my life right now is out of alignment with the version of me that I choose to be? And then I reflect on who I want to be. And then anything that doesn't match that, I get rid of it ruthlessly.
So Kim, Jeffrey's got a follow-up to Josephine's question. He says, can you speak to the practice of activating DNA?
Ooh, no, I can't. I can't.
We
But
reached
you
the
know
limit.
what? Well, I just discovered something that I need to learn more about. So
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, I can't, but that's fascinating. And does anyone else on the panel here want to?
Not at all.
Address that?
No, I want to know what Jeffrey has to say about it, to be honest.
Yeah, what's Jeffrey?
Yeah, give us some input there, Jeffrey. I'll take a stab at it, because I
Awesome.
basically have no degrees in any of this stuff, so I figure I can't go wrong. So, I mean, I'll just take the Abraham Hicks approach to it. What are you focusing your attention on? If you're focusing your attention on stuff that you like, your DNA is going to reflect that in the long run. I can't say how long, but it's bound to be one of the many, many positive consequences that come from focusing as much of your attention on what feels good to you, on what you prefer and what you like and what you enjoy. And if you can do that through meditation, if you can do it through mindfulness, if you can do it through affirmation, then do all of that. And as you do that, guess what? Your DNA is going to get activated. Now, how is it going to happen?
That really is a good point. Well,
I mean, I don't know how it does. I mean, I don't even understand how it is that a signal gets from your brain to a toe. I know that they figured that out, but to me, that just seems miraculous, So I can't explain how it works, but I know it works. It's kind of like what Bob Proctor says. You don't really know exactly what happens when you flip the light switch on. How does the electricity light the light? I don't know, but it turns on. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, and it exists, even though we don't see it. It exists.
Yeah,
exactly. But this is what isn't this a lot of what Bruce Lipton's work's about? I remember one time I got to see him live, which was amazing. The biology of belief. It's that, like Kim said, I think it's only 2% of all diseases are actually purely genetic. The rest of them, the genetic potential's there that's turned on or off depending on the inputs. So it's our beliefs that actually change it. It's like no food actually makes you fat. It's your beliefs about the food that make it fat. And you could say, on another level, the collective agreements that we have about certain types of food are what create the effect. So if perchance Jeffrey's talking about activating certain DNA to achieve certain things, or the junk DNA, which I don't agree with, then it really would just be the lens that you're looking through, or the beliefs that you have. And the thoughts, the primary thoughts, which we learned from Dr. Joe, is triggering what we're expressing in terms of our reality. If your thoughts and your beliefs are aligned with certain DNA potential, then I would say it's probably going to set you up for activating it.
And I would concur with exactly what you and Walt said about that, because it's a formula, and the more that you do it, which is exactly the way you're setting it up, it all starts with our thoughts, and it has to do with our environment, and it has to do with getting the body working with the mind. But a consistent awareness and implementation of that every single day it's the law. If it's going to change your life will look different if you're just, supremely aware of everything that comes into your environment.
It's true. And the cool thing is, the more we work on it, the more aware we become. That's the part that amazed me.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a new neural pathway.
Yes.
It's a new neural pathway of procedure and discipline. And I'm still working on mastering myself.
I think we all are. By the way, Jeffrey did follow up. He says, that's why I asked. I have encountered people that say that they do it, but I suspect it is a form of pointed guided meditation or hypnosis. He says he also likes to imagine that we can unlock dormant superpowers. And I absolutely believe that.
I definitely co-sign.
Yeah, I think it's just belief. I think when we think about the fact that it's been demonstrated we live in a universe of infinite potential, the only thing that limits that potential is our beliefs about what of that potential we can access. And so, for example, when we go to Dr. Joe events and we see like people show up in wheelchairs and walk out, which is not an uncommon thing. And I mean, I was just there in January. Kim was leading there. Actually, my other half was on her team. There was someone on my team that had stage 4 cancer and now doesn't have cancer.
Wow.
Now, I can't speak to whether it disappeared necessarily there, but she was dedicated to doing this work and showing up as a person that didn't have that cancer anymore and now does not have cancer. But there were physical markers that did shift over the time that she was at the event. She was of Moroccan descent, a faithful Muslim, and was unable to go through the full actions of prayer because her body just couldn't do it. She was in so much pain that the cancer was in her bones. By the end of the week, when she stood up on stage and did a testimonial, she was demonstrating her ability to have that mobility.
Oh, wow.
But that shift can only have happened if she believed it was possible. She didn't believe it was possible. It wouldn't be able to happen. So miracles, in my opinion, miracles are just things that fall outside of the collective agreement of what's normal. But I think that miracles of any type are possible. It's just whether or not we have a belief system that supports us being able to witness it.
Yeah. And Kim, I imagine that when one of the great things about going to a workshop with a Dr. Joe and seeing all these is you get to vicariously experience the miracles. I think there's something powerful about seeing that kind of a transition in such a short period of time with somebody else who's observing and participating in the same event you are. There's got to be some.
There are no words. There really are no words to describe the miracles that I have witnessed. And I want to talk about a gentleman who same retreat. It was in Dubai. He arrived on my team at the last minute. He showed up in a wheelchair and he had a tumor that was on his spinal cord. And the doctors basically sent him home and said, there's nothing else that we can do for you.
Wow.
And after the event, he sent an x-ray. He went to the doctor because he felt that he was healed. And he went to the doctor, and I want to pull up a picture that I want to show you of the before and after. In fact, also, if you get a chance, if you're watching this, he was recently in the last week, he was featured on Dr. Joe's blog on drjoedispenza.com.
Okay.
And his name was Till, T-I-L. He's a German guy. And so anyways, let me pull up this picture.
Yeah, sure.
It was amazing and just the nicest guy ever. But he goes through the process of what, he did. And a lot of what he did was what Daniel was saying is that he, mind over matter, mindset. So hold on a second. I'm going to pull it up.
Sure. While you're doing that, I'll also take a little moment here to do a little promo because we like to do that every time we do a show. If you are enjoying this show, and I think you probably are, because if you're not enjoying this one, you're probably dead. But assuming that you're alive.
Wow.
If you are dead, thank you for listening anyway. But if you're alive, we would really love it if you become a subscriber. Very simple to do. If you aren't sure how to become a subscriber of a podcast, we'll walk you right through it. Just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and at the top of the page, you'll find instructions on exactly how to do it. And that way you will be getting all 5 episodes we do. We do 5 episodes a week, Monday through Friday, with different co-hosts every single day. And so you get law of attraction from so many different perspectives. And it's kind of like the advantage of going to a Dr. Joe workshop, where you see these people who come in, the ones who have the most extreme cases, and then see them make these magnificent transitions. The same kind of joy comes from hearing different ways of looking at and understanding the various practices and how LOA works, and what you can do in your own life, and what to do when it doesn't seem to be working out right, and how to turn things around. I mean, when you have all those perspectives, I can tell you just from my own experience, I've learned a ton just by hosting the show. So you'll get the same advantage by being a subscriber as well. And also, we encourage you to subscribe to us on YouTube. We don't have tons of people on YouTube watching us, although the numbers are starting to creep up a little bit. But it's fun because then you get to actually see us. You get to see Daniel as he's smiling and talking into the camera. You get to see Kim as she's looking into her phone, looking for the pictures. And you can see Dan when he comes zooming in on the camera and makes his eye really, really, really big. You know,
you can see me and Alex trying to hide the dancing.
Oh,
it's going on.
It's a contest.
I gave up.
But
Kim, live out loud.
Kim, you got to hear Alex, because Alex has the best way of describing how to become a subscriber. So, Alex, I turn it over to you. Give us your best shot here.
Okay, so what you want to do is go to YouTube and then search LOA Today podcast videos. And once you see our smiling faces, click down below on the red subscribe button. And next to the red subscribe button, there's a silver bell. And make sure you click all so you will always be notified when we're live.
And there it is. Very simple. So, Kim, any luck?
A plus.
Thank you.
Were you able to find anything?
Yeah, I found it, but now I realize I need to turn my alerts off because my WhatsApp. I'm preparing for the Spain week-long retreat, and I've got people WhatsApping me. Crazy.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to show you this picture. This is a picture of Till's spinal. Let me move it over here. So this is the before picture over here. Let me get my, okay.
Make sure you get your mic closer so we can hear you too.
Oh, sorry. All right. So, oh, come on. I'm going to have to, hold on a second.
That's all right. Take your time.
All right. So, in this frame right here, I just want to point out that this little guy right here, that right there, that's the tumor. Okay. That's the before tumor. Okay. And then I'm going to move this picture over, and technological difficulties, people. But if you look, okay, so if
you can see,
wow,
dramatically shrunk. Yeah.
Right. It shrunk. And that was right after the week-long retreat.
So after
that's
1
crazy.
week. That's pretty cool.
So yeah. So I hope you were able to see that. At first I was like, what the hell am I looking at? You know, when you I'm not a doctor.
That's right.
I'm not a doctor. Can you point this out for me, please? But wow. I mean, you know, just to witness his healing was just amazing. And after the event, he said he could walk 500 meters without having any support.
Wow.
At all.
For somebody who was wheelchair bound, that's huge.
Yeah. Now I'm not certain if he's gotten rid of his wheelchair completely, but I do know that
he's shown the progress. The progress is there. I mean, that's indisputable progress. You know, regardless of whether you think this could actually work for everybody, it worked for him. So he clearly made progress, and that progress means he can keep doing it. You know, there's nothing stopping him at this point.
And I think part of the process is, you know, being in receivership, because that's part of it. When someone is offering their healing services to you, you know, their healing love is really, you are of service to another human being, but it is about being in receivership. And because, you know, everyone is worthy of being whole. Everyone is worthy of being healed. And so, you know, that's really an important part of it.
It really is. Yeah. It's what you're calling receivership, I might call ownership, but basically it's taking ownership and taking responsibility for your own life, for your own future, for your own experience in a way that perhaps that's right. That's right. And the feelings that go with it too. With the knowledge that when you do that, you're going to have a better life. I mean, Dan, your life is like exemplary in that way. You were talking about that last Thursday. I mean,
It's true.
Kim, last Thursday we did a show where we talked about a process that my wife and I call hippoing. Hippoing is drawn from the word hippopotamus, and the reason we picked that one is my wife's favorite Christmas song is "I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas." We equate it as being a way of saying this is this really, really, really big thing that I can't possibly reach, but I'm going to dream it anyway. So we were hippoing, and Daniel was saying, "I don't know if I can do this. I mean, I have everything that I want."
What do you get the man who has everything?
I love my life.
Yeah, and I totally get that too. It's like it when you begin to do this kind of work, it really no longer it's no longer about stuff and abundance. I mean, like we have so much abundance, and I mean, I can't really speak for Daniel, but if Daniel says that he has this life of abundance, I believe him. I believe
Sure.
that he's perfectly happy and content, and so am I. And it's because you know because of the things that I've experienced and the mystical things that I've witnessed, and I just say more of that. That's what I want. That's what I want.
That's actually true for me also. I mean, these guys were actually doing like outer space trips in terms of their crazy impossible dreams.
We're going to different dimensions.
They were just, I mean, this is like Star Trek on steroids. I mean, it was just... But for me, I just, there's so much here on Earth that I like, that I want to explore more of. That to me is the ultimate.
I've been there, done that.
Oh, so you're like the joke about Mr. Smith. Mr.
Which
Smith.
one?
This is the one where Mr. Smith comes up to the guy telling the joke and says, "Hi, I'm Mr. Smith." And the guy says, Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah, okay. Mr. Smith says, "Well, now I've died. I've met everybody around the world." And the guy says, "What?" "You met everybody?" He says, "Oh yeah, I've been really busy. I mean, I've met all 8 billion people around the world." And the guy said, "Well, how on earth do you do that?" He said, "Well, you just do it one day at a time, and you're meeting everybody you can. You're shaking hands, and you kind of keep mental tabs and so forth. And that's how you do it." And the guy was amazed, like he couldn't believe that was happening. And so Mr. Smith walks away, and the guy's standing there befuddled, and his friend comes up to him, and he says to his friend, "Do you know who that guy is?" He says, "What do you mean? The guy over there on the left, or the guy with Mr. Smith?" So he got to him too. So Alex, when you say that you actually have been there, done that, I have to ask you, you met them all?
No. My point was, what I was saying is, I want to go to outer space because I've already been to Earth. Like,
I see.
I was born here, so I'm done. I'm over it.
That's like me in England. That's like me in England. It was like, oh, when are you going back to London? Never planned to. Did it for 32 years, doing the rest of the world. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's because you've been introduced to Cabo.
Yeah,
right.
That's like heaven on earth.
Kim and her other half have actually been to my place, so they've seen the sunset on my rooftop. So she knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, just gorgeous.
I have to give you credit, Kim. How did you pull yourself away to get on the plane to leave Cabo?
It was tough. But I was en route to Dubai, so. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't Dubai. It was Malta. It was another island. Yeah.
And there are kids involved. Kids that need to be fed and watered.
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah.
There's that.
Oh,
there's
right. Oh, right. Oh, thank you for reminding me.
Well, we knew you lost track of them earlier, so we thought we should point it out.
I'm kidding. I have teenagers, so
they can feed themselves.
They can feed and water themselves. They're fine.
Oh yeah.
Well, all the parents will understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Being a teenager myself, I totally understand.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. To teenage unicorns.
Quite challenging.
Yeah.
So that's unicorn years, right, Alex?
Nope. This is Alex years.
Alex years.
Nope.
Amazing.
So Kim, I got to ask you a little bit more about your non-Dr. Joe stuff, because you said that you have another interest, another line that you follow. Tell us a little more about that.
Oh, are you talking about my real estate background?
Well, I think you also said you did something with
background.
I thought you had like something that you did corporate or
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, I'm like, what? No, I'm just kidding.
How soon they forget.
Wait,
Well, she
what's
can
my name
forget her
again?
kids. She
Oh,
can forget
yeah.
anything.
Kim Li Boda. So this book right here is called Change Your Mind, Create New Results. This is a program that we are bringing into the corporate world, into organizations, and it's a wonderful program. Um, and it talks about exactly what we've been talking about, how to create your life. And it's done in a very business-like way. And we just talk about the mind and the body, and we talk about the programs. We talk about the three brains that help us to go from thinking to doing to being, and we really dissect um, the human condition and why it is that we do the things that we do. And it's brilliant. It makes so much sense. I just delivered it to a group in Santa Fe, and they absolutely loved it. It helps people to take what you were calling ownership of their lives as well, Walt. And it helps, an organization with a lot of their pain points too. There's a lot of change going on, and there's a new consciousness that is coming to the business world.
Yes.
And I get to be part of that. I get to bring a sense of consciousness into the corporate world because it's sorely needed. These businesses, these old paradigms are crumbling, and they really need this work because let's face it, the old the old paradigms are not working. They're not working anymore.
Well, they never
And
really did, actually. When you
they
really come down
yeah.
to it.
Well, they did for a little while, when everybody was on board, but those systems are all falling away. And we've got a lot of social issues and cultural issues these days, and we're all connected. That's just the way it is,
Mhm.
and we need to get on board with that.
Because I remember when I was young and entering the work world for the first time, this kind of conversation, talk about woo, this was like outer space, what we're talking about right now. This was way, way out, not even worthy of consideration. And what was taught was, well, it might have leaned a little bit toward Tony Robbins, but even that was a little bit aggressive for them. It was, it was more, I don't know, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale or something, but even there, that was a little bit too much. Most of it was just the hard work approach, nose to the grindstone, and how can you help your cubicle mate, keep his nose to the grindstone and all that kind of thing.
Matter to matter.
Yeah, yeah.
Matter to matter.
And it's
And
it's a
also,
rough way to go. I mean, yeah, I understand what you mean, that it kind of works sort of, but having been through it, I can tell you it didn't really work very well. It was actually rather painful to go through it. So I'm really glad the more stories that I hear, and I'm hearing a lot of them, including from you, about
well,
how
I
more and
think
more
I
companies
think
are taking it
people
on.
well, and I think people are waking up.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most, generic way. People are waking up to the influences around them. And, it befuddles me that people still don't want to accept that there is a mind-body connection. I mean, there is a mind-body connection. And if people it still want to have their head in the sand and kibosh that, you can continue living in whatever fantasy land that you're living in. But our bodies and our minds are connected, and we are very powerful. We just need to harness it. And that's what we're
Absolutely.
doing with Dr. Joe's work is we're harnessing it. We're harnessing it through health. We're harnessing it through consciousness in business. We're harnessing it, and personally.
Yeah, that's really good stuff too. I like that.
Mhm.
It's funny too, because when we are talking about these things regularly on the show, we come at it from a wide variety of different ways. I don't think we talk a whole lot about from the corporate perspective, but you're right. That perspective has shifted and is continuing to shift. And it makes me wonder. I mean, Dr. Joe wrote the book, You Are the Placebo, which was groundbreaking and is still widely debated and often dismissed in medical circles, in the more traditional medical circles. But there are more and more adherents coming on board, more and more people at least willing to pay attention to it and maybe explore it, maybe even add it to their research. Give it a chance, yeah. And it makes me think, what happens as more and more research is done on the power of the placebo effect? Just that alone, in the way that traditional medical research just does their stuff. Because for so long, they rejected the whole idea of placebo as something worthy of study. They said, no, that's something you have to filter out of your results. Otherwise, your results don't make any sense. And I imagine to myself, what happens if as they start to shift that, and they are shifting it slowly, but more and more people are on the research side, are getting into doing that shift, doing that exploration. As they continue that shift, I mean, how else can it play out other than the entire medical establishment starting to move? And that's what we're seeing. I mean, it's not happening at it's a glacier pace. It's not happening at Indianapolis 500 speed, but it's happening. It's moving. And I think, I'm just trying to imagine even 10 years from now where the whole thing's going to be. Do you have any feel on that, Kim? Where do you think it's all going?
That's a good question. I think that the more that a lot of us who are doing this work get out there and we're vocal about it. I mean, let's look at the 4 people on the panel. We're pretty sane. I mean,
I think so.
You know what I'm
Sometimes.
saying? Like sometimes,
not every Thursday, but that's another story.
Alex might say, no, I'm not. I don't want to do that. I don't want to.
Yeah, prob not.
I'm my purple hair and my unicorn status. But
exactly.
No, I'm teasing.
Actually.
But the thing is that it's people have common sense, and when you start to look at all the facts, and that's what I love about Dr. Joe's work. He does so much research, the brain scans, the blood testing. And all of it is it's you can't refute it anymore. And the people that want to refute it are the ones that are making tons of money. They're the pharmaceutical companies, they're the doctors. But I'm sorry that it's slowly there is a shift, but they're not going down without a fight.
No.
But the numbers don't lie though. That's the thing that
the numbers don't lie. Yeah.
And this is one of the things I just love about Dr. Joe. You can't argue with the numbers. We're talking about, I've been in this work for about 5 years and he's been doing this, I don't know, since the 90s or something crazy. When did What the Bleep come out? I don't remember when that was. That 2000.
I want to say, was it 2002? I think
something like that. Yeah.
18 years of collecting,
I believe,
data. You can't argue with the data. We could talk about, that's someone's perspective, or someone just believed they got better. But when you've got X-rays of a tumor that decreased, when you've got people whose brain scans. The way I first met Kim was at my very first advanced workshop. Kim actually fitted my brain scan.
Yeah, I brain capped you.
Yeah, brain capped.
I had you under my control.
Under my control, yeah. Yeah, like you can't argue with nearly 2 decades of data.
Well,
and I think that's what's so. I'm trying to find the word. Because people can't figure it out, it's not predictable. It's like quantum mechanics. It's not predictable. So therefore, it's not predictable. So I guess it's not real. Well, no. Life is a mystery, and we're going to have to start facing the facts that mystery is a part of who we are, and we've got to stop questioning and analyzing everything and just go with it. What kind of a life do you want to have? I for one, I want a meaningful life, and so bring on the unknown.
I'm with you. Yeah, I actually saw a blog piece. It was a blog for medical workers, a board specifically for people who work in hospitals and so forth. And this one guy had got on there. He basically posted he wanted to share a letter that he had sent to his boss at the hospital, complaining that the Mind Heart Institute had once again made a presentation, and he was so sick of their presentation. So he was basically trying to tear it down, right? And he gave his reasons, and the way he gave his reasons was really interesting. Now, this is a complete doubter and disputer, right? And he's saying, a lot of what they say is actually, I already know is true. And a lot of what they say is pure woo-woo nonsense. And so I don't really know how to handle that. I don't really know how to evaluate that, other than to say, I'm really tired of hearing it over and over again. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a fairly negative review, but wow, what progress that is compared to, say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, he wouldn't have even taken the time to write about the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, you can see the progress. It is slow progress, but it's there because, like you say, Dan, they can't dispute the data. They can dispute what the data means. They can complain about that, but the data itself is data. And every scientist knows what the data is.
The old ways of doing things are not working anymore. And that's piquing people's curiosity. I mean, people spontaneously healing from, tumors. I mean, there was a gal that was in the Cancun retreat, and no, excuse me, she was at the Berlin retreat, and she got up on the stage and she said that after one of the coherence healings, the tumor in her neck shrunk, and she said it visibly shrunk, it spontaneously. And I was like, well, how does that happen? How does that happen? And she did come to the Cancun retreat after that, which I think was a month and a half later, and she brought all of her, her X-rays and what have you.
Right.
And sure enough, the tumor had shrunk significantly.
Mm-hmm.
But the energy healings are such that, I mean, they're wild. I mean, it's crazy.
I was actually trying to explain to them before, Kim. I was like,
yeah.
You just have to see it for yourself. You can't. It's not one of those things you can really explain.
Yeah, it's basically getting 8 people together and harnessing a coherence of energy that is so strong that, and we're not even touching people. Like, we're just literally going like this. We've got our hands out like this. Okay, we're not touching anyone. We've got 8 people, and then we've got a person who's getting healed in the center, and the frequency gets so high that the cells, because we're made of water, which is a conduit, as well as the nerve endings that come around and surround the cells. Those are known as, like Dr. Joe calls them, scaffolding. The scaffolding of the cells, and we have trillions of those cells, and the scaffolding envelops the cells. And the cells, when they're under the influence of this amazing frenetic, not frenetic, actually, it's very coherent. Excuse me. Yeah, not frenetic, very coherent energy. And what happens is they begin to shake. And, the energy in the body just starts, you can visibly see it in the person sometimes. Not everyone does it, but sometimes they do. And what I understand is happening, is they're basically shaking loose anything that doesn't belong inside of a cell. So when the frequency gets so high, let's say a tumor cell is inside of this cell, it doesn't belong there, and the frequency just basically goes bam, and it pops right out. It just gets pushed completely out of the cell like that, and then it gets released into the bloodstream or the urine or what have you, and then it gets flushed out. But yeah, I mean, I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I mean, that makes sense. And
sounds legit.
It makes sense when people come back and they have their x-rays and they're like, hey, check this out. My tumor's gone. High five.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know. I don't need to know the
how the light switch goes on.
That's right. I'm like, okay, it's a mystery. Let's do it again.
Sure.
Do it again.
And I think that's going to be the kind of thing that ultimately does reach the mainstream, because you mentioned coherence. Interesting. As soon as you said that, I said, oh yeah, that was one of the things he talked about in his article, was coherence. He says, well, coherence is just a sine wave is all that is. And there was a dismissive tone in the way he wrote that. And then he didn't follow up with anything else. And I'm thinking, he hasn't really actually seen anything that's happened with this, has he? He's never really seen the kind of story you're talking about. So I'm thinking eventually he will. Eventually, as the research starts to catch up, he'll see something like that. And I can just imagine his mind running into that and saying, yeah, but that's just a sine wave. How could the sine wave be doing that? And
but it's
the
a
thought process is
frequency,
going.
and
Oh,
you
sure,
know,
yeah.
and
But I'm imagining
it's
his
a
thought
frequency.
process.
Yeah, right. And
His
so
thought process is just like, wow, now I'm starting my exploration. Wait a minute, how can a sine wave do? The sine wave can't do that. No, I'm going to reject that for a while. Yeah, but a sine wave did that. And, you know,
we'll
you
have to
just
do
imagine
another
it.
podcast about heart math, because
Okay.
heart math is just, man, it's freaking me out. It's so amazing. I was like, what? You know, I mean, yeah, I don't want to give anything away, but the heart has so much to do with what we're talking about too.
Well, then take a look at your schedule. You know, let's
Ah!
maybe for next Tuesday see how you're doing. But you know, let's look at your schedule, get back to us, and tell us when you're ready to come back, and we'll do heart math. I mean, it's that simple.
I gotta polish my skills, and then I've gotta work on that
Okay.
activation of the DNA information that I gotta get my learn
So
on.
we'll give you 2 weeks. It's okay.
2 weeks. I was giving her Thursday. But I don't know. Up to you.
Good stuff. I really like that. Well, this has been great, and I'm looking forward to having you come back, Kim. I mean, that's my kind of silly way of saying we'd love to have you come back and talk about stuff like this more, especially, you know, the heart
I
math.
love
Sure,
to talk
that's a
about
great
it.
topic.
I do
know?
love to talk about it, and I love this work. You know, I'm so grateful, but on the same token, you know, we do create our life, and I've been working real hard on myself since I started doing the work, and I'm just I love the community that I'm in. Dr. Joe is you know, he's brilliant, and I'm just so grateful that he is doing the work that he's doing for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
Me too.
yeah, it's amazing.
That's how I got to meet you, Kim. Yay!
Yay!
Very, very good. Well, then, thank you very much. But hey, before we go, do you want to give anybody who might be interested information on your corporate program in case they want to follow up and check that out?
So the program is essentially, it's best over a day and a half, and there is lots of media. There's a little over an hour of media that, you know, Dr. Joe pops in, and he talks about some of the concepts, and it's like I said, it's brilliant work. It's great for organizations who are ready to shift the consciousness within their own, you know, with their business. And it's great. So you can also find me on Instagram. I'm at kim.boda. I'm the mindful agent. And yeah, let's connect and let's take on creating a better world, a more conscious world together.
Or as Jeffrey said in the live stream, I love that we are scientifically explaining magic. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Love it.
Well, that's what I think. That's what Dr. Joe says, right? He says science is the new mysticism.
It is. It's true. Yeah. And if that doesn't shake you up, nothing will.
Well,
Kim,
glory,
thank you so
hallelujah.
much.
It's time.
Thanks so much for
welcome.
joining us.
Thank you so much.
This has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate that you took the time to answer my question, because I've been wondering about this for about a month and a half now, and that's far too long for a question to gestate. I mean, it really has to get answered before that. So, no, thank you really very much, and by all means, we would love to have you come back. So, look at your calendar, figure out what works,
as well.
And let us know
Thanks,
what works.
everybody.
Okay.
You're
so thank you guys. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Alex. You guys were amazing as usual. We really appreciate you. Thank you, live streamers, and especially thank you to our podcast listeners as well. All of you, hundreds and hundreds of people we love so much. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.